Hello, everyone. Welcome to LoFi History at the Northeast Georgia History Center. And this is a particularly special LoFi History because it is going to be Glen's last LoFi History, at least as executive director, I would say. Maybe we'll have you on as a special guest. What do you think, Glen?
I'm trying not to cry or think about it.
Oh, no! Same here.
That's why we have sunglasses on.
That's right.
Yes, that's why he's got the sunglasses on. But yes, Glen, if our audience has not been caught up on our newsletter and Facebook posts, I want to give them a brief announcement of your new career and everything.
Yes, I'm after 15 years leaving the History Center as executive director. Leaving it in good hands, I might add, and moving to a marketing firm, also here in Gainesville, Forum Communications. Their offices are literally about 200 to 300 yards.
I didn't know that.
Northeast, yes.
Oh, that's great.
They're very close. I have to, instead of, only the locals will understand this. Instead of turning this way at the Rotary Tree, I have to turn this way.
Oh.
That's it?
That's about it.
Oh, I'm so glad.
All right, so we can just march down there and drag you back.
If I'm there.
In case of an emergency.
There's going to be a
hey,
good
Glen,
bit of...
what would a Scottish Highlander wear in
We have
1780s?
questions.
Yeah, so of course, we'd love to have you back as a special guest for LoFi sometimes.
I would love that.
Wonderful.
That's up to y'all, though, because
Now
I won't be making any decisions.
That's right. No more decisions.
No more decisions.
So we've got our usual fans here. So good to see, especially David. David, we haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
So good to see David, our friend from Wales, who we got to know during the pandemic times. I see Terry from Iowa is here. Oh, Terry says, I will miss Glen.
Glen will miss Terry.
For sure.
And everyone else.
Yeah. Barbara on Facebook says, best of luck, Glen. And then she's got her question. We're going to get to that in just a moment. If this is anyone's first time here at LoFi History, one, welcome. And two, we are here to answer your history questions. Now, I will be monitoring the chat, trying to do my best to Google the things we need some help with. But our historians here are Glen and Marie, and we always like to start out with what they are wearing. Now, before we go into that, though, I just want to go through something that I would like to share, and that is as many still pictures as I could find of what Glen has been wearing, and a little bit of Marie, I suppose, and a little bit of me. At LoFi History. So I'm going to show some past LoFi histories because, again, if this is your first time here, we always start out with talking about what they are wearing. Now, back in the early days of LoFi History, I got to be the one to dress up with Glen. This is pre-Marie, I do believe. So now, Glen, which outfit was this?
That's my World War II Soviet infantryman. Winter gear.
Nice. So World War II Soviet winter.
Krasnoarmiechman.
Nice. And then we have, what is it, the nice colonial gentleman?
Yes, 18th century man.
18th century man, indeed. And then we go on to...
U.S. World War II man.
Yeah. So we're far from the second. Now we're on to U.S. World War II man. Ooh, what's this one?
That's 1830s man. U.S. 1830s man.
I just noticed your expression, Marie. How shocking!
I'm very shocked at something that's happening.
Yes. But 1830s man. Excellent.
She's in awe of that hat.
That's what it is. That's got to be what it is. And then we have question mark.
That's one of those. Glen forgot to bring an actual outfit today. Let's see what's on the rack outside in the education cage.
But you've got your, 1800s?
I've got my 1800s hunting frock and random wool hat.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it. Oh, this is, now speaking of hats, this is top notch.
Oh,
that's a good hat.
That's my 1830s civilian man.
Ooh, 1830s.
With my tall straw hat.
I don't feel like I've seen many tall straw hats. That's a good look. I think we should bring that back.
It's very comfy.
Now, I don't know, is this different than your 1800s man? Or
that's casual 1800s man.
Yes.
With no coat.
Oh,
yes.
I see, yes.
I'm sorry, yes, 18th century, thank you.
18th century, there we go. Now we have, I think we know what your go-to, I forgot. I forgot to put a costume on. So I've got my Hunting frog.
That's right. And a top
And
hat.
a top hat.
A different hat to throw everyone off.
Yes, exactly. We've all. You were probably playing General Oglethorpe for this, Dave.
Yes, my red French and Indian War man hat and coat and waistcoat. Yes.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Oh, I forgot about that. My 1980s infantryman outfit.
Ooh, 1980s. Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and then we've also got your Navy boy.
Yes, the sailor outfit, and that's the Navy is home of tradition, and so that could work anywhere from 1903 to 1997.
So longevity there.
Yes.
We've also got Civil War, I believe.
Yes, Confederate man.
So Confederate man, Civil War. We've got some more 18th century.
Yes, more 18th century.
Love it.
Back.
Ooh, this one looks interesting. What is this one?
That is my World War II British para.
Ooh, British paratrooper.
Paratrooper, yes.
Nice. I like that hat. That's fun. David says, I bet they don't let him dress up in his new job.
They're gonna have to.
Yeah, right.
But I'll just stand out even more.
There you go. We've got more 1800s.
More 18th century. Yes.
Going even further back in time, we have your monk robe, I believe.
Yes, the medieval monastic robes.
Ooh, and more medieval. We've got medieval everyman.
Yes.
Very fun. Ooh, this is a fun hat. I like this one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, the World War I German with the Pickelhaube.
The Pickelhaube.
Pickelhaube.
And then let's see, I've got I think we'll end with your first time you probably forgot to bring something. And then back to the classic
hunting frog.
frog.
Because it covers anything and everything.
Yes, it has been so much fun hanging out with y'all for Lo-Fi History. I'm so glad this was one of those ideas during the pandemic where we just threw it at the wall and see if people wanted to come and nerd out with us, and it looks like y'all do. Thank you so much. I want to go through the chat before we dive into your costumes. We have, yes, Karen. Karen is here. Good to see you on YouTube. Barbara, Terry, David. Laura is here. Laura says, going to miss you, Glenn. Richard is here. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Richard.
And Josh is here. Alma is here as well. Hey, Alma and Gabby. So
the gang's all here.
Yeah, the gang is here. So thanks so much for joining us. Again, if this is your first time here, you can go ahead and chat your questions. And both Marie and Glenn have quite a wide breadth of knowledge, so go ahead and chat your questions for them. To answer any history question is welcome. But we do have some in the chat already, so let's go ahead and dive into today's questions. And our first question comes from, actually, it's from last time. It comes from Josh. So we didn't get to this one last time, but Josh is the king of the what if. Yes, so we love Josh's what ifs, and this what if from last time is, what if Winfield Scott won the 1852 election? Would his administration been able to keep the country stable longer or less? Would Scott choose to run for re-election in 1856? I have no idea because I've never heard of him. So, who wants to take this? Who's Winfield Scott? It sounds familiar, actually. So
Winfield Scott he came to prominence during the War of 1812. He won some crucial battles up near the Great Lakes, and went on to become the leader, the guy in the U.S. Army from that point, from the end of the War of 1812 through the 20s, through the 30s, through the Mexican War. He led forces during the Mexican War, and he was still commander-in-chief of the Army in 1860 when the Civil War began.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a picture of him. He had gained so much weight towards the end. He loved to have those fancy uniforms made, but he had to ride in carriages for parades because they couldn't find a horse that could carry him for any length of time.
Oh, no.
But he was very much a stickler, but the Army loved him and people loved him. he didn't have a chance in that election, right?
He did not have a chance.
I don't think so.
Who was he up against? Let's see. Yeah, that's funny. He was literally known as Old Fuss and Feathers.
Because he liked to dress up and he liked to complain about everything.
I love that. Now,
just like me.
Yeah, right. Now it says he unsuccessfully sought the Whig presidential nomination 3 times, 1840, 1844, 1848, but he finally won in 1852 when the party was already dying off. So let's see about this presidential election in 1858. Unless Josh was maybe off by the year. Let me see.
He tried running every time, and I think he was very much. I don't know if he was a states' rights. He was more or less just leave everyone alone and let them do their thing. Until it came time to do what the Army wanted to do. And then when it was time for the Army to do something, then the Army was going to do it because it was going to do what he told it to. I think, here's what I think.
Yeah,
let's assume he had won.
Yeah.
He's not going to get a second term because at that point, the issue of the expansion of slavery into the Western territories is such a big deal that no president is going to be able to address this to the satisfaction of North, South, or Western states and territories. They're just going to be flipping back and forth until you get to the crux, which is when the Republicans are able to get enough votes to have someone be seriously considered for president, like was what happened in 1856. And then by the time you get to 1860, because of the overwhelming population in the North that's able to vote, Lincoln's going to get elected in 1860. Yeah. So I don't think his presidency would have changed the course of history very much. I think we were on a collision course with separation.
The beginning. To South Carolina.
I see. Right.
It's always South Carolina.
Yeah. It's always South Carolina.
Wow, South Carolina.
When South Carolina was like, no, we would like to keep slaves.
They do make.
Then they were, we're going to have to figure out how to deal with this at some point, and then, eventually.
They do make good mustard-based barbecue sauce, though.
Well, then I guess it's, it's...
South Carolina, not Winfield Scott.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
Just to be clear.
Oh, no, I forgot. We didn't talk about your costumes that you're wearing. We went through all of Glen's, but Marie, why don't we start with you before we go to our next question, and I can give folks time to throw in their questions. What are you wearing today, Marie?
So as you saw in the slideshow, I was actually wearing this one a few times, and I style it in different ways. Sometimes I do more like fun Ren fair, but this one's very much going for like an early Tudor look, since this is my Tudor kirtle. But finally, last year, I add like a thing to it each year every time I go to the Ren fair. I'm like, I need to make this new part of the outfit. So I made a smock last year, which is bless you.
It's pollen time down here in Gainesville.
Yeah.
So I made a smock, which is essentially you could call it like a chemise or a shift or something, but in Tudor times is generally referred to like as a smock most of the time. At least that's what the Tudor Tailor book called it. So that's what I'm going to call it. But it's like the nice big long underdress that goes all the way under. But it has nice little cuffs and everything, and like a giant V on the top here.
Yeah.
To the point where I feel like it keeps going backwards. I need like a little tie or something to like hold it together. But this one should be made out of linen. I made it out of a cotton bed sheet. Don't tell anybody. But then this is wool.
It's
this
just
is all
Ren
nice
Fest.
and wool.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And then I, tried to style my hair in more like a cap and braids, and
that's cool.
Then sunglasses.
I like it. Yeah. Very cool. And Glen, I believe it was Karen earlier, said, "Are you off to the Western Front?"
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
No. You know what? I decided I'm going to be in. Was it the 77th Division that got sent to fight the communist in 1919. That's where I'm
there
going.
You go. All right.
I'm too late for the Western Front, but I'm going to go fight the commies, and then it's not going to work, and we're going to freeze to death, and then we're going to be recalled.
Cool.
Well, have fun.
But this is
World War.
This is World War. This is the Great War, World War I, doughboy tunic. This is back when they thought that the dress tunic could be the filled tunic, and it could all serve the same purpose. So you have the very high, annoying collar with the 4 pockets on the coat. The nice wool. Wool is what you get in uniforms, but It is. I do not like this collar.
Yeah.
I do not like this
Too
collar.
stifling.
And the thing is, this one, because this is a modern. This is a reproduction. This is not a real one. So the collar actually does have a little bit more room than historically they would have. They would have just been like tight. Like there would be no gap between the neck and the collar.
Oh, interesting.
If you're comfortable, it doesn't fit right. That was the model of the Army when it came to fitting its uniforms to the men in this time period.
Well, excellent. Y'all are looking dashing for your last day. Yes. Now, let's get to our first official question of the day. And again, if I see some folks have just joined us, go ahead and chat your questions for Glen and Marie. Any history question is welcome. Now, Barbara has a question for us. Barbara asks, can you explain the Mary Chestnut diary entry, quote, "We are devouring our clothes," unquote. Were they really eating them, or does that mean something else?
You probably know this one.
So I actually have just been looking into the Mary Chestnut diary entry because we will be doing a podcast series of ladies and their Civil War diaries. So be sure to check out, then again, our podcast for that coming up soon. Now, I don't know exactly what diary entry you're referring to because it is about an 800-page book. So I'm not exactly sure. I know she makes a lot of reference to her clothes. I do not think she's actually eating her clothes.
No.
I can tell you that that's not happening. They remained very wealthy throughout the war. Their time of relative poorness-ish, if you want to call it that, does not start until after the Civil War. And her diary does not go past really July of 1865. So they would not have gotten to a point of eating their clothes. She was like dining with the president and was talking about multiple times about how like wonderful the table is and how she enjoyed luncheon and all of these wonderful dishes that she ate. So I don't think they ever got to the point of that. Now, when she's talking about clothing, it did get to a point because of the blockade and such, and clothing becoming incredibly expensive, that like she couldn't buy clothes as easily, or she would actually like sell her outfits to like get some more money.
I see,
But because there is one entry where she's talking about her husband's mother had died and she was buying mourning clothes, and she was saying, oh, it was just like this simple frock, but it was like still $300, and like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe, like, imagine paying that much for this just like simple dress like a few years ago or anything like that. So I think when she's probably saying like we are devouring our clothes, is that we're going through our clothes
and we're just wearing them out.
They're just wearing out their clothes because like it's very hard to get new clothes, and she was probably used to getting new clothes a lot.
Yeah.
Like, let's remember, Jefferson Davis literally like walked her home from church. She was of the upper echelon of like high South Carolina society, very well connected, where very much of the planter elite class making their money off of plantations that they didn't even, like, she didn't even live at that plantation most of the time. She was off in Charleston, Richmond, renting other houses, staying with rich friends.
Woe is me, will this war ever end? Our struggles are even greater than those of our boys on the front lines.
Yes, just sitting around and worrying, and I'm on, like, well, she wrote a whole diary, so she did do things. She wrote a diary, but when she's saying devouring clothes, I think that she's like just wearing them out, and she's not used to ever wearing anything out.
And here's a portrait of Miss Mary Chestnut.
Yes.
Wearing some clothing she has not eaten, so that's good.
Great.
Yeah.
Love that.
But yeah, great question. Thank you so much to Barbara for that question, and very timely since we'll have that podcast episode coming out. And Marie, just to dive into that a little bit more, since Mary kept this diary, how common is it to have that kind of primary source for the Civil War from a woman's perspective?
So we are looking at 4. So if you're having from the Southern women elite, there are quite a few diaries. Of course, you have to have the diary, it has to survive, and then they have to be willing to publish it so we know about it.
Right.
So therefore, to have those stars align is probably not as common, but there's enough of them, and it's really nice to be able to have those firsthand accounts to read through to see what they were thinking, experiencing, their point of view from the world, which is a very unique one and an interesting one that perhaps is not captured as much in the mainstream when we talk about the Civil War.
Yeah.
But they are, especially Mary Chestnut, who was eyewitness to a lot of key events in the Civil War because her husband was like the one that they sent off to go negotiate at Fort Sumter to like surrender, essentially. So coming back, just like her conversations that she recorded with her husband's things that she recorded her husband doing or seeing or saying is just incredibly fascinating, and also gives very much a more human perspective to these dates and names and battles, and just gives it a more human face, because that's what it is. History is people. Good, bad, and ugly.
But not universal, like you said. Many of these diaries that have still exist are from the upper echelons. It's like World War I, right? We all think about that British war poetry that was written by all the well-educated Oxford and Cambridge lieutenants and captains. Doesn't necessarily represent the rank and file way of thinking of things and looking at things. Still very good, still very insightful, but not as representative as some have led us to believe.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing like the actual words from those diaries and everything in the podcast episode. So stay tuned for that. And just to plug the podcast, if you're not following the podcast, then again, we have.
Well, if you're not, why aren't you?
Why aren't you? Yeah. Come on. I'll put a link in the chat. Now, our next question is from Richard, one of our living history interpreters. And Richard says, my question is right up Glen's alley as it deals with the 18th century. During the Revolution, could the British have done anything different to have more success, especially regarding the Tories? Now, this sounds like a big question.
That's a big question. No. I mean, that's I think.
Well, could you explain Tories for anyone who's
not
familiar?
So it is a misnomer, not a misnomer. Not everyone was in favor of independence leading up to the revolution, including folks like Benjamin Franklin, right? He didn't become a proponent of independence until about a year and a half before the Declaration, when he did support it. Many Americans, from the French and Indian War all the way up, considered themselves British subjects, were happy to be part of the British Empire, had fought for it in the previous wars, and only after things had gone so far in the public mind, I mean white males who had the political enfranchisement, did they start to consider independence. By that point, I think it was too late for the British to really have done things to reverse it, because there were overtures made by the Howe brothers, by different peace offerings that were trying to bring them back into the. Well, you know what? We'll lay down your arms. We'll take you back in. We'll forget all this happened. But by that point, independence had become the sticking point. If in 74, 75, the king and certain members of Parliament had settled down and were like, you know what? These are fair points. Why don't we grant each colony one representative in Parliament? Or even grant all the American colonies a representative in Parliament. Even that.
Right.
One person, 13 people in a Parliament of hundreds would have been enough to assuage most of their concerns and fears.
Wow. Yeah.
But they were so unwilling to admit that, to bend to what they considered undue pressure, they wouldn't even consider it. The king wouldn't even consider it. And that is what pushed them so far as to declare independence and agree to fight a war against the most powerful empire that the world had seen in a very long time, with an army and a navy and the funding and capital resources, the likes of which is hard for us to imagine in comparison. And they put it all on the line for independence, so they were not going to give. It literally was a victory or death situation. So during the Revolution, there's nothing the British could have done to go back, or and so the Tories are the ones who remained loyal to king and country in the North American colonies. There were a lot of them, but even they slowly started to change their minds. Even the ones who stayed loyal to the king up until the very end ended up leaving North America, because who wants to live among neighbors who knew that you were a traitor the whole time? During the war, by the time it had gotten to the war, I think it was too late. The shots had already been fired, blood had been spilt, a lot of sacrifices had been made, and by the time the shooting starts, there's no going back, one way or the other.
That's a great question, Richard.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Other historians will vary in their...
Yes, of course. Now, David mentions that Tories is used today as a kind of derogatory term for conservatives in the UK. I did not know that.
Yeah, they're
So
still
that's
the Tory party because we call them loyalist. That was their preferred term. That was how they identified. They identified as loyalist. The derogatory term was Tories.
I see.
And they had used Tories back then too.
When I was in Oxford and I somehow ended up at a open mic night for local talent. There was one man who got up and started reading poetry that he had written, referring to Tories, and I was like, the Loyalists?
That's so
and I was
fun.
like confused for a few minutes, and then I realized, I'm like, oh, he's talking about like their conservative party. I guess that's the same thing.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
But for you, it was just like Tories.
I know, like Loyalists, because that was like my first thought, and then I was like, it can't be that.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Oh, I see that Olivia has joined us. Hey, Olivia. Good to see
Olivia.
you. Jennifer has also joined us, saying, "Watching with my boys." Oh, hello, welcome. And again, if anybody's joining, you can go ahead and chat your history questions for our historians, Glen and Marie. Any history question is open. And we've got our queue open right now. So let's go to our next question. Thank you so much again to Richard. Our next question is going to come from Kelly. Kelly from Michigan. Says, wondering if the British won the Revolutionary War, would the Civil War have happened? So I guess in a sense, like, I mean, yeah, that's a really cool question, actually.
Okay, no.
I like
It wouldn't
it.
have happened.
Because
I mean,
the
it's
British...
a cool question, but like,
Oh, I
yeah,
see what
the
you mean.
British
Yeah.
outlawed the slave trade and slavery in the 1820s?
I can
It's
check
like-
that.
Right around there.
well, because it was slave trade and then slavery, but then also then you have to outlaw slavery versus slave trade, and then also in their vast colonies around. So in like
1833.
yes, so
Yes, that was the final cutoff
yeah,
when slavery
so it starts
will not,
into
yeah.
the 20s to 30s. They had a lot of because
It was a stage thing.
Yes.
I mean, not a stage.
but Great Britain had a lot of different. It almost was considered like a miniature revolution in like the 30s because Parliament was passing so many reformative acts. So one of them being like slave trade, and
Right.
then they actually opened up enfranchisement more than America even had enfranchisement open to some people at that time. So I think that actually perhaps a lot of problems could have been avoided that America was facing in the mid to late 1800s that Britain was trying to rectify in the early 1800s.
But
Yeah.
would that have led to a second revolution? Because
Oh.
Britain wins the revolution of the
Okay,
1770s.
right. Let's just say that.
Or wins the war of the 1770s. The North American colonies remain as part of Great Britain. They probably do eventually get representation in Parliament in some way. They become British citizens. As Benjamin Franklin said, demographically, we're going to become the center of the British Empire because our population is growing so much faster. Let's say that had started by the time you get to the 1820s and 30s. But slavery is still legal in the Southern American colonies. Commonwealth. Then Britain says you don't get to have that in the entire basis of your economy. We're going to do away with that for moral reasons.
I
And-
think, but see, by the 1830s, that's when we really have the shift of the viewpoint of Americans versus going from slavery being a necessary evil to being a positive good. So if you shut down that idea fast enough,
If you shut it down fast enough, that is revolutionary. I don't think the South would have stood for that. I think what would have happened is there would have been another insurrection that probably would have been put down much quicker with much less bloodshed because it would have been the British Empire,
So there
including
would
the
have been
North
a
American colonies, a rebellion.
because it wouldn't have actually worked.
True. That's
No, this is
I think
who
fascinating.
knows, but that's
There could have been a rebellion, but I don't think because
It would have
you
been
also
squashed.
didn't have the Spanish-American War and you didn't have as much expansion, so you don't have as much
Oh,
territory.
yeah,
Are
that's
you
true.
suggesting that the British would not have expanded into the western part of the continent?
Oh, I think they would have.
Been all about that.
It would have happened, but technically it had. If we're going on our timeline
Right. When would it have happened?
of when it would have happened, if it happened
this
at the
is-
same time it did happen for us, we wouldn't have had that
And this is after
whole
the Napoleonic
expansion
Wars.
once.
Would
Yes.
Spain have even
But
been a threat
but
at
see,
that time,
if
too?
French had held on to
Louisiana,
they would have had to surrender that to Great Britain in 1815 at the Treaty of Ghent.
Wow, we are getting into the weeds.
And if they
here.
had done that, they still would have gotten that. Spain would have been allied with the British, and they may have gotten to hold on to the Mexican territories, but
Okay.
that revolution would have taken Mexico to be independent.
So would
I need to
we
write a
have-
book.
Yeah.
Would we have even had an independent Mexico though? Because that happened in the 18.
Oh yeah, Spain couldn't hold on to anything
Well,
at that
there we
point.
go.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, you have just inspired Glenn to write a new book.
A what if novel.
A what if novel. So thank you so much. That was a great question, though. I mean, I think these kind of what if questions also inform me about the consequences of, later future events if they didn't happen, if they did happen. I mean, it really calls into question just how, just the randomness of the universe comes to play in history, but also these things that are planned for, ages and ages. So
Right.
it's this combination of influences. That's really cool.
Counterfactuals can be a useful historic exercise.
It sounds like it, yeah. And maybe that's what we should.
That's
that
what
should
the
be
what
your
if questions
title.
are.
Counterfactuals. Yeah, I love it. All right, our next question is from Olivia. Olivia says, "Ooh, Olivia has a what if." So we gotta give Olivia our what if. So Olivia's what if is. What if William McKinley... Oh, that's so funny. I think we've gotten this one before. That's okay. We'll discuss it. What if William McKinley wasn't assassinated and Roosevelt was never president? So, have we gotten this one before?
Single tier.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't have been president that early. Because
you
if
think he'd run
McKinley,
later,
had been elected, I'm sorry, he was elected. If he hadn't been assassinated and died, he would have continued his presidency. Theodore Roosevelt would have continued to be his vice president and probably slid into that position after his second term, maybe something like that.
Mm-hmm.
As it seems to be kind of a thing
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
for some people.
Yeah, I think Josh asked that
I think
one too.
so. Yeah.
Um,
That's been a good what if before.
Because we talked about how, because I think McKinley was assassinated during his first term.
Yes.
He never was, so that would have pushed Roosevelt way farther back to almost where he would have been president during the First World War when it started, which means America would have gotten into the world much earlier.
Ooh.
Yeah, just because.
Because Roosevelt likes to speak softly
Yeah.
to a big stick.
So that's a lot of implications to go into a
Yes.
world war, the First World War, so much earlier. So
And then would we still have had the National Park Service, or would he have been just so focused on World War I that he wouldn't have had?
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah,
He wouldn't
yeah.
have had time for his other fun stuff.
It's Theodore Roosevelt. He could have done it all.
Yeah.
He was full of energy and verve.
That,
right.
but he said he could run the nation, or he could, control Alice, which is his daughter. He couldn't do both. So
Can do both.
Oh, why didn't she run for president?
Now that would've been
If
fun.
only, that'd be cool. Now, Explore Gainesville is here. Oh, hey, Explore Gainesville, our friends over at Explore Gainesville. They said we are going to miss these. Oh, yes. Well, we're gonna see. We got all sorts of restructuring, but it's an exciting time. So I don't think we're gonna see the end of LoFi history. We'll see what happens, but we'll definitely be finding fun ways to connect with y'all for sure. And having Glen on as a special guest every once in a while would be
Yay.
wonderful. But so good to see y'all. Now, let's go to our next question from David. David also has a what if. Oh my goodness. All right. What if for David? So David's what if is, what if the Alamo never took place? Would Mexico still have Texas? So maybe give us a little brief overview of the Battle of the Alamo. Glen's getting ready. All right. Whew.
Okay, so there was a movement in Mexico to pull Texas out of Mexico because a lot of Americans had moved in and brought slavery with them. Slavery was supposed to be illegal based on the Constitution of Mexico of 1824, but it was also supposed to give the Texans certain rights, which they felt were being taken from them. And so a movement began to declare Texian independence. And they began to form militias. And Santa Anna, who was the commander of Mexico, knew that if they split off, that would spell the eventual end of Mexico. Or especially, he knew the Americans would not stop. So he had to try to repress this revolt, this rebellion, this insurrection as hard as he could. And so this had been going on for a couple of years, this little back and forth between the Mexican government and the Texans. So when the Texans do finally decide to kick all these small Mexican garrisons out of little towns like San Antonio de Bejar and Gonzales and Presidio La Bahia and places like that, they scurry back to Mexico. Santa Anna has formed this large army and is going to march forth and do all the things. There are a couple of rebel strongholds. One is at Presidio La Bahia, which is where Fannin is, with about 500 men, the largest group of men to oppose Mexican control. There are a few men at the Alamo. They were supposed to have abandoned the position as untenable because it was a crumbling adobe fort, as one of the great movies says.
Here's a little picture. This is probably post-battle, I would imagine.
It is, but that's about how it looked at the
yeah.
time of the battle. So they decide to stay and hold it. Fannin's men they try to leave La Bahia. They get surrounded, they get attacked, they surrender, and they are all slaughtered to a man, almost. The massacre at Goliad. And so the Alamo hears about this, and Travis as commander and Bowie as commander decide to stay and give Sam Houston time to build an army and have the Texans declare their own independence. They haven't done this yet, and they haven't written a constitution, but that happens while the Alamo is being held. The Alamo is under siege for 13 days. A pre-dawn assault on the 13th morning overwhelms everything. They kill all the defenders, including Jim Bowie, William Barrett Travis. Did I say David Crockett already? David Crockett was there. About 200 people. So the Alamo falls, but this becomes the rallying cry for all of Texas to come to Sam Houston. Sam Houston's aid. He catches Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto, captures Santa Anna himself trying to escape as an infantryman, forces him to sign a paper recognizing the independence of Texas, and Texas becomes an independent republic for 10 years until it agrees to become the next state in the United States under the presidency of Polk.
So all of that to say,
what if the Alamo had never happened?
Yeah, would Mexico still have Texas to this day, do you think?
No, I don't think so, because, well, I don't know.
I think
all the battles were so touch and go. San Jacinto lasted for about 15 minutes because Houston caught Santa Anna in the absolute worst position, surprised them, like I said, captured him and forced him to sign the surrender document that recognized Texan independence. The Alamo held that off, held off Santa Anna's forces in time for a lot of this to happen, and created a rallying cry, and it's not where Texas was born, but it's where Texas became Texas, if that makes any sense. If you go to Texas today, there is one shrine that has, I think, 1.5 million visitors a year. That's the Alamo.
Yeah, right.
That's where people go.
And I have a picture of the chapel that's been restored.
And I actually got my wonderful wife had a conference in San Antonio and got me an airplane ticket and let me go to my childhood dream of visiting the Alamo in San Antonio,
so cool.
and Goliad, where Fannin's guys were, and Fannin was a Georgian. There was even a Hall Countyan. George Wells was at the Alamo.
Oh wow!
He was a Hall Countyan.
That's cool. Nice.
Oh my gosh! To get back to the point, it would have been, like I said, it was touch and go. It was very close. Santa Anna could have, if he had played his cards right, defeated Sam Houston's very small, undisciplined army, and tried to keep Texas in Mexico. There was too much going on in Texas for that not to eventually happen. As a matter of fact, they didn't find out about this until years and years later. a fellow named Edmund P. Gaines, for whom Gainesville is named,
Ooh.
was in charge of the United States Army right on the Texas border, right on the Mexican border. And he took it upon himself to make sure that the revolution was going to succeed, to the point of saying, if things look like they're going to go south for Sam Houston and for everyone, I have about 1,500 U.S. soldiers who are suddenly going to resign the Army, volunteer to form battalions, and go south and fight against Santa Anna.
Wow.
And if things had gone that bad for Sam Houston, that's probably what would have happened.
Wow. Yeah.
He was not in communication with Washington, D.C., by the way. He was just going to do this.
Wow.
And he probably would have done it. And that would have been a U.S. Army volunteer,
Right.
sure. They were supposed to take their U.S. buttons off their insignia and just march south.
Wow.
And they would have probably whopped Santa Anna's army at that point, and also again assured Texas independence under the surviving remnants of the leadership of Texas. So it was probably going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
It just happened the way that it did.
No, that's fascinating. Excellent question, David. Thank you very much.
I could go on.
Oh, I'm sure you could. Oh, and Richard has a connection for us, or correction. McKinley was shot shortly into his second term, so in the beginning of his second term.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Richard.
Now, let's see, our next question. Ooh, I see Olivia has another what if. Olivia, I've got that in our queue, so stick around. This one is from Alma. Let's see. Alma says, deviating from theater, as usual, where your questions are, in honor of Girl Scout birthday and cookie season. Oh, yeah. When Girl Scouts first started selling cookies, how common were youth organizations, and was fundraising for them common, or were these groups generally just for the well-off?
Oh, Libba, you've got this one.
Yeah.
I can answer this one. Yes.
We're just going to...
Yeah, right. Yeah. If it's anything Girl Scout related, I got it. Yeah. So Alma, Girl Scout cookies didn't really take off until really the 1930s, and then 40s and 50s is really they just explode because they could be mass produced and there's varieties of them. But the idea of having a bake sale was very popular in the early Girl Scouts. So for instance, I recall coming across in my research, it was the Mistletoe Troop, I want to say maybe in Oklahoma or something, where they were mentioned as having a very successful bake sale with shortbread cookies. And this was during the time when Girl Scouts was trying to think of, okay, we're getting larger and larger. How do we fundraise? Because Juliette Gordon Low was a wealthy woman, and she financed the majority of Girl Scouts in the very beginning. Other ways that they would fundraise were through, of course, once they were manufacturing uniforms, you could purchase your uniform or purchase the pattern for your uniform. You're also going to buy the manuals. There might be a small registration fee, but it was very important to Juliette Low that girls of all social classes could join Girl Scouts. Even in this time of her life being a world that's segregated, she still felt that money, especially, should not be an obstacle to a girl becoming a Girl Scout. So, but of course, Juliette Low passes away in 1926, and they've got some fundraising measures in, but I said 1930s is when this really takes off. So it's a couple of years later that they start with shortbread cookies, and then introduce a variety that we know, many of which we still have today. I want to make sure, let's see, was it common for youth organizations to sell cookies? That I don't know if other youth organizations were selling cookies. I would imagine, bake sale's been a pretty easy go-to kind of fundraiser, but on that kind of scale, I don't know if they really had any competitors with this is our fundraiser, our cookies. I think they really got in early on that and have really dominated the cookie market. So. But yeah, and like I said, you were asking about were these groups generally more well off. Most of the time, your Girl Scout troop is going to be your neighbors, people that are already very close around you. So despite wanting a mix of people, it might be the case that, if you're in the wealthy neighborhood, then your other fellow Girl Scouts, where the troop is located, they're probably going to be in the same social class, but it was during the times when they would go to summer camps and hiking adventures and these big events where they would all come together, where you could really see Girl Scouts from every demographic, and that includes racially different Girl Scouts too, even as early as 1917. So pretty fascinating. I can always go on, but yeah, the cookies as we know them today really didn't start off until after Juliette Lowe's death, and really took off in the big time in like 40s and 50s. So yay! Yeah, it's always funny when I'm portraying Juliette Gordon Lowe and I get the question of cookies. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Alma, and I hope that Gabby enjoyed that answer too. Now, our next question, yes, we're going to get to Olivia's other what if. So, Olivia's what if is, what if the stock market never crashed in 1929? Would that snowball to Hitler not coming to power? And maybe I don't quite make the connection between the stock market and, I mean, just economically, is it because, like, the world was in a terrible economic dire straits, and then Hitler comes to power because of that vacuum or something?
Part of it.
What's going on? Yeah,
there's multi-complicated factors.
Yeah,
as there always is in history.
Yeah, but talk to me about what's the connection between the stock market and the economy and what, World War II, I guess, right? I mean, we're going into 1929, so yeah.
Well, it all starts in World War I.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, at the end of the war, the Treaty of Versailles imposes harsh conditions on Germany. They want, especially Great Britain and France, want reparations paid. They want to make sure that Germany's economy can not get strong enough to be a military or even an economic threat. So Germany's not doing well anyway.
So Germany, I don't really think they were as affected by the stock market crash because they were already...
Well, what happened is it made things worse.
Yeah.
It made because
it was already really bad.
things were bad. Well, so the Weimar Republic comes into being and struggles through the early 20s and sort of the mid 20s. They're finally starting to find their way. They're finally starting to get to the point where the economy's sort of starting to get back on its feet, barely, but it's still very crippled because of having to pay these war reparations to the Entente, to Great Britain and France. Great Britain and France are also, their economies were severely hampered by the Great War, so they're not as economically prosperous as they were before the war. And then when the stock market to make sure Germany could pay the reparations to Great Britain and France, so that Great Britain and France could repay the war loans to the United States has to give loans to Germany. So the loans to Germany go so that Germany can pay the reparations to Great Britain and France, so that Great Britain and France can then pay their loans back to the United States. It's a great big weird international finance circle. So when the stock market crashes, those loans to Germany break down, and Germany can't pay the reparations, which means economic depression goes all throughout Europe. And the Weimar Republic, never being very stable politically or economically, just goes downhill. Widespread unemployment. The consumer market is gone. Heavy industry starts to almost disappear. So many people out of work. Which is why Hitler and the Nazi Party become very popular. Remember, Hitler didn't take over. There was no coup.
Right, yeah.
Hitler and the Nazi Party were elected according to all the rules of the Constitution of Germany because they made promises and they kept the promises. Vote for us and you will get your jobs back. Vote for us and we'll put bread on your table. There will be pride and dignity in being a German worker again. And at first, they deliver. So the stock market exacerbates that. The stock market crash in the United States exacerbates that situation, brings economic downturns all over the world because the United States had been the primary exporter of capital for that time. If it hadn't happened, the good times probably would have kept on rolling.
Yeah.
In Germany, the distaste over the Treaty of Versailles was still very strong. There might have been more opportunity for folks like the National Socialists to come to power, but it wouldn't have been as easy.
Okay. Yeah.
It wouldn't have been
Right.
so easy for them to get the thin wedge in, make the promises, and then start keeping the promises and seem like the saviors of Germany.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a
I
good
think
point.
it still would have happened. I don't think it would have been as smooth or as easy.
Drastic and quick.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it would have been a far more of a slow chipping away if there was not another big disaster where they could come in and be like, look, we saved the day, aren't
Yeah.
we? Great. Because, that's politically works well.
Yeah. Right.
For your political image, if you can be the person who sweeps in and saves the day.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a big financial crash like that, specifically on one date necessarily, it would probably been, because it's the Weimar Republic. How long is it actually going to last? It was probably going to collapse in on itself at some point if nothing.
Right.
If it didn't have a better trajectory, either it was going to get better or it was going to get worse. So
Yeah.
if it got
It
worse,
was very unstable.
Hitler could have still, I think, gotten a foot in and.
Because there's the whole Bolshevik question over in the Soviet Union. It's crazy times.
Yeah.
Those 1920s.
Well, it's a good connection to make, Olivia. So thank you for that. What if? Now for our last question with Glenn. Of course, it's going to be a what if with Josh. Now, let's see. This what if is what if by some chance Hoover lost the election of 28? Let's say McAdoo instead of Smith obtained the nomination. Would there have been a Republican Roosevelt?
We're going to go on the assumption that the stock market crash still happens.
Yes, right, yes.
Because that's I'm setting the rules that I just made up.
Cool.
Because part of the economy and the stock market was that things were very unregulated, right? The Republicans come in after World War I. They want to return to normalcy. That keeps going. And as long as the economic times were rolling, the Republicans were going to stay in power. Generally speaking, in Congress and in the White House, it took drastic economic downturns for a new party, a reform opposition party, to be able to get in. So I don't know how the Democrats could have been elected, because things were just running like a sewing machine at that time.
I'm also interested by the part of the question is would there have been a Republican Roosevelt then? Are you saying I guess I'm confused.
Well,
I
I guess
didn't know
what I'm
that
saying is
either.
if the Democrats had been elected somehow in 1928, with the stock market crash, let's just, again, this is a what if.
Yes.
Somehow, the Democrats gain control of the White House in 28. 29 rolls around, stock market crash.
Yeah.
People mad.
People mad. You're possibly, because that's what happens. That's why you get cycles in political elections.
Yeah.
That's why it goes back and forth between the two parties, Democrats, Republicans, because things go good. When things go bad, you blame political party in power and vote for the other guy, because how could it get any worse? Let's see if what they have will work for a while.
Yeah.
If the stock market crashes under the Democrats in 1929, and they don't do anything, if they, how much could Hoover have really done?
Right.
We don't. Economists and historians argue over that. Then perhaps there could have been an opposition party that would have been led by the Republicans, because there's no other choice.
Yeah.
That could have come along. Now, what would the Republican platform have been of we're going to do things differently than the Democrats?
Yeah.
There's no telling.
Because Hoover was also very much it's not my business. I'm not doing anything. I'm not touching it. So it would also, you would have to have a Republican shift of mindset to where it would still be, we need to do something to fix this, or this is,
Let the market correct itself.
Yeah, because if you campaigned on that, I have a feeling that it would be a really hard sell.
Right.
Vote for us. We'll do nothing.
Yeah. Right.
I feel like that would be a hard sell.
Well, as usual, a great What If, Josh. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for a very special Lo-Fi history. We'll be back in some form. And you know, if you just can't get enough of Glen, you can see him this Sunday at our free Family Day. Woohoo! Yes, we have our Family Day. This is all about Scots-Irish heritage in Georgia, and Glen will be doing some living history interpretation there, as well as a weapons demonstration. And
pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, and this is completely free thanks to the Ada Mae Ivester Education Center. So details on that are on our website, of course. And we also have another Glen event, or at least one. This is one that Glen will be leading. This is our forum, and I think usually our forums are more geared toward like adult audiences, but I think this one would be great for all ages. Do you agree, Glen?
I think so, because there's going to be a lot of we're going to be looking at a lot of propaganda and art and things like that too. So it's not just going to be dry talky talk.
Not that our forums are ever dry talky talk. But yeah, this one will be great for all ages. There's going to be a lot to look at. It's all about the American home front of World War I. So what was going on here in the United States. And then we have a really awesome homeschool day that is all about ancient Rome. When in Rome, that's Thursday, March 23rd. And this is going to be a lot of fun. You can also see Glen there being a Roman legionnaire as well. So
they're getting their use out of me in these last days.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I see people in the chat are saying good luck to you, Glen. And
thanks.
Yes, this has been so much fun. And
you guys, you have this. I've told everyone this literally was the hardest decision of my life, because this is the part that I love. This is the part that I'm going to miss, is talking to y'all, hanging out with the staff, and having history fun, and having met all these great people in person or virtually for so long. And I'll be back around. I'm not disappearing off the face of the earth, but it won't be the same.
Yeah.
So thanks to all of you for making my time here so special and so hard to leave.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. All right, we'll see you later. Bye everybody.